It had been a while since my last case, when things hadn't turned out so well, but there'd been a lot of water under the bridge since then. Cold, bitter water, mixed with tears and whiskey. Bitter tears of regret, mixed with that dirty, stinking water that flowed like a severed artery of bleeding hope, flowing out into an uncaring sea. But that was all in the past. Unfortunately, during that last case, I'd slipped on some KY jelly. My hat flew off and I'd hit my head on a life-size bronze statue of Queen Victoria riding a goat. After being knocked unconscious for a few minutes, I came round to see two blurry figures looking down at me. A blonde woman wearing nothing but an eye patch, and a ginger woman dressed as a Roman soldier from the waist up. Waist down is just a blur. That blow to my head has left its mark. Not only a scar, but since that day I've been suffering from intermittent word confusion. I kept getting words mixed up and using the wrong ones, but I wasn't going to let something as silly as that stop me. I was a dick, and I was proud of it. I was hoping to get some treatment for my word confusion, and as luck had it, my next case meant I had to follow a woman whose husband was paying me to find out if she was being unfaithful. The lucky part was the woman in question worked in the King's Cross area of London, teaching origami to the recently bewildered. The building where she worked, in fact, taught many different classes, including overcoming word confusion, just what I needed. So here was an opportunity to kill two birds with one bone. That evening I prepared to follow my client's wife as she made her way to the evening school. I slipped on my private dick overcoat, grabbed my hip flask and opium pipe, and was on my way. It was a filthy November evening, only 6:30, but already as black as thick stinking tar, and all the while a constant vile rain was falling through a dismal, melancholy veil of fog. I had my collar up and my face down. That's probably why I lost her, but no matter. I knew exactly where she was heading. As I walked along the crowded London streets, every kind of person you could imagine was passing me by. Drug pushers, pimps, rent boys, pickpockets, pimp pushers, drug pockets, pick pimps, rent pushers. Yep, it's a crazy mixed up world. I passed by a King's Cross station and a young lady in a doorway beckoned me towards her and asked me if I'd like a good time. As she asked, she lifted up her skirt to reveal she'd already removed her knickers for my convenience. I must admit I was briefly tempted by her romantic suggestion, but I declined because I had important work to do. As I went to walk away, she said, "You can do me in the back entrance if you like." I said I haven't got time to walk all the way around there, and I went on my way. As I turned the corner by the closed down Kipper Tyre superstore, I noticed the place I was looking for, and my client's wife was just around the corner. It was a large grey building, and a minute or two after her, I entered it through a revolting door. Inside the building, looking for the word confusion advice room, I began wandering the corridors. I'd planned a quick class for myself, then I thought I'd pop into the origami for the recently bewildered class to keep an eye on my client's wife. After spotting a room with the word Paul on the door, spelt P-A-U-L, I pushed the door and entered. Inside were about a dozen people playing football with a dictionary. It turned out to be a class for dyslexics who had given up the ghost. I turned, pulled open the door that said push and left. It didn't say push and left, just push, but I left all the same. Walking further along the corridor, I peered into another room. As soon as I did, a man in there shouted at me. "Fuck off, you cunt," he said. I replied, "What class is this?" And someone else in the room said, "Level 3 swearing advanced, you cunt-faced fucking arsehole." I didn't hang about. I was soon once again looking for the word confusion room. I entered another room, which contained 4 friendly people. I asked them for directions, which they kindly gave me, but unfortunately it turned out that theirs was a class for compulsive liars, and they sent me to the wrong room. The room they sent me to was in fact the one for the origami for recently bewildered. As this was the class where my client's wife was teaching, I thought I'd give up on the word confusion and sit myself at the back and begin doing my job, keeping my eye on the lady teaching the origami. She was a very attractive woman, blonde, about 30 to 35 years old, who could certainly knock up a quick paper swan. My client's wife was called Jane, and as I sat at the back of the class, she demonstrated her origami techniques. There were about 10 people in the class, 4 of them women. Just as Jane was making the last few folds to a life-size paper version of the Last Supper, a couple of students got up, walked past Jane, who gave them a knowing nod, and they went through a door at the back of the room. One by one everyone else did the same, until only I was left sitting there. Then Jane said to me, "Origami is over for today. You can either leave now or come in the back way for some extra tuition." Well, I had a job to do. I was being paid to investigate this intriguing woman, and also her offer for me to come in the back way was more than I could resist. She led me into the mystery room, and I was quite surprised at what confronted me. The room was a sex dungeon, and already my fellow origami students were stripping off and changing into various skimpy rubber and leather costumes with all sorts of straps and buckles. Before long they were beginning to perform strange sexual acts on one another. With me being a dick, there isn't much I haven't seen, especially of a sexual nature. I've searched the internet to make sure of that, but some of the things those people were doing made me light up my opium pipe with shock. So, my client's wife was running an illegal sex dungeon brothel and was charging people to take part in all sorts of weird bondage and spanking games. Well, while the depraved acts persisted, I remained professionally smoking my opium pipe. I was also taking photos with my phone, for professional reasons of course, and I became rather fuzzy from the opium, and before I knew it, I was naked, apart from a leather face mask, and Jane was whipping my excited genitals with the foliage of a cheese plant. It was just about then that a voice shouted, "Quick, get out of here, we're being raided by the police," and with that, everyone began running out through the emergency exit. They all ran out into the busy high street, attempting to blend in with the Thursday late-night shoppers. I didn't run, who knows why. Maybe because I was far too dedicated to my job to run away. Either that or because Jane's sensual whipping had brought me close to orgasm. Whatever the reason, when the police burst in, they were confronted with Jane, dressed only in a rubber thong and nipple clamps, kneeling in front of me in my leather mask, as she continued to whip my fully excited penis with the leaves of a cheese plant. And at that moment, I was too close to orgasm to worry. But when the police grabbed Jane and dragged her away, I grabbed the cheese plant leaves and began whipping my own member in a desperate attempt to reach sexual completion. The police grabbed me, slapped on the handcuffs, and led me out to a police van. A gathered crowd watched as, still naked, with leaf-stained genitals fully on display, I was thrown into the van and driven away. Well, that really was the end of that case. I tried to get off the charges by telling one of the top policemen that I was a dick, but he just said, You don't need to tell me that. In court, I was disqualified from being a dick for 2 years. If only it was that easy. Well, I was once again out of work. That night I sat in my dimly lit office and smoked another cigarette. The smoke spiraled up, making kaleidoscopic patterns as it danced in the flickering neon that streamed through the rain-soaked window. I poured another whiskey, and I read the situation's vacant. How was I going to make a living? Then I remembered the excitement I felt when I was being whipped by the leaves of that cheese plant, and as fate would have it, right at that moment, fate shone down on me via the local newspaper. The ad read, "Florist required."